You don't need to really be in this, online courses hell, like this infinity loop. Like there are billions of courses. You don't really need to do all of them. So just master a few of the technologies and then just go and test yourself at the job interview. I think the biggest misunderstanding, and I think most of the DevOps engineers actually made it, is the fact that people tend to jump directly into these fancy tools like cloud native or cloud engineering. I would remove some part of the sort of low quality education there where teachers really confuse a lot of things and not taking responsibility for their words.
So, welcome back to Bits and Balls with Paulina. We talk about how to get practical with leadership, technology, AI, a bit of business, and many other things. And today we will be diving into topic of education, especially DevOps education. What works, what doesn't, and what does a beginner really need to focus on in 2025, even if some people think that DevOps is behind us. And I'm really excited because today's guest has helped more than 100 aspiring DevOps engineers transition into the field. Welcome to the show, Szymon.
Hello, thank you very much.
And for those who don't know, perhaps you can say a bit about yourself. What's your background? What's your story?
Yeah, sure. First of all, thank you very much for having me here in your fantastic podcast. I've been listening to all of the previous episodes, so I do recommend them at the beginning, especially the episode with Alan. But my story, really where to start. But I originally graduated from mechatronics, which is not IT that much related, I would say, which was more of mechanical engineering, automation, this type of stuff. And then I moved my career towards more um, LTE and 5G engineering because I got my first work in Nokia as an intern. So it was a natural move towards telecom. But after working few years in telecom industry, I quickly realized that the career rooftop was quite low. I would say it's difficult to drive career in this specific field. At least this is my experience. And then I decided to move to this new trendy field of IT engineering, which is called DevOps. Because in the telecom companies where I used to work, we are also building code, running the code, delivering and this type of stuff. But it was mostly LTE stuff and 5G, of course. So then I transitioned my career to DevOps from telecommunication industry. And well, I guess I loved it so much that I also started my own company that is developing, producing all of the education materials within the DevOps field. And I guess that's it.
Quite a journey. I have to admit, I have a bit similarities in journey because I also started in mechatronics and also transitioned to DevOps on the way. Also happen to teach from time to time. But so it's gonna be interesting to compare the views, especially on education and how to get started. Because at least for me, it was quite a challenge to start in DevOps without prior education in IT. I don't know if you had a similar experience.
Right. It was, depends on which specific aspect. Because, for example, me coming from the telecom industry, I knew stuff like networking quite okay. Router, switching, IPs, this type of stuff, which is also quite valid thing in DevOps when you think about it, to make sure that your servers are able to communicate, right? But all of the other topics, like, for example, software development, oh, that was a nightmare. So security aspects, also another nightmare. So, of course, at some domains, it was more challenging than others. Yeah, but I guess you had the same, right? Some domains you were challenged. Some of them were quite smooth for you.
I had the same. Some was similar because I had masters in automation robotics. So I work with some of the stuff, but some stuff like even some basics. At the beginning, I didn't know what is a CNAME or DNS because that was not needed in my prior experience. So yeah, it was a very weird mix of some stuff getting really easy and some stuff getting quite hard. Uh, well, from your experience, you helped hundreds of people transition into DevOps without especially having, computer science degree. And you have seen inside of large organization. You work in Thales, you work in TTC Net. Where do people completely misunderstand what learning DevOps actually requires?
Well, that's a fantastic question. I think the biggest misunderstanding, and I think most of the DevOps engineers actually made it, is the fact that people tend to jump directly into these fancy tools like cloud native or cloud engineering. I still remember when I was transitioning, so I was, self-taught DevOps engineering home, and one of the first thing I did, I still remember when I tried to spin up my own Kubernetes cluster, and that didn't end up well. I was struggling a lot with it. So then I realized that, first you start with Linux, then once you master it, you go to Docker. Then once you master Docker, you move to, some more advanced tools like Kubernetes or cloud platforms. And this is very much, I think, common among my colleagues and my friends that are working in the DevOps industry, that people tend to, jump directly to, more advanced stuff rather than looking at the basics, what's Linux, what's server, how IP works, this type of stuff.
Yeah, I can see the same trend, that people, a lot, especially with the boom of cloud over the last few years, many people jump directly to the cloud in the organizations without necessarily knowing, how to do with even, basics of Linux or command line on Linux, or how to spin up the Docker locally even, or run it on Linux or the server before having it in managed version.
Exactly. Exactly. And what comes with it is the fact that, for example, people really don't know how to, for example, work with the software within the Docker images because, they just run one simple command, Docker run, and turns out, well, it doesn't work. Well, it doesn't work because you need to add some more parameters. And I think if you really want to harness the power of DevOps, like building the pipelines, delivering the code, making sure everything is tested and secure, you really need to start with the basics and then gradually, slowly, and it really requires a lot of patience. With patience, time, yeah, and good troubleshooting skills. Yeah,
I think, especially with the security and everything, I'm repeating the same stuff. Go back to basics, harden your passwords, rotate your passwords, and, yeah, same with Docker and other stuff. What's the most common misconception you see beginners bring to your Become DevOps community?
I think people want to see the results of their work, of their code right away. And they think that, if I, do this very simple magic that I have seen on the YouTube tutorial or I have learned from the Udemy class, it will work right away. Unfortunately, it's not really the reality. So people come, they have this, expectations that, because I know already, for example, this and this, I'm able to achieve, I don't know, much more complex deployment. Reality is unfortunately much more complex because you need to first understand like the bigger picture of the technology, how it works, where everything fits. Like, for example, we have the trainings on Ansible, right? And I have some people that come to me and say like, oh, I want to build this, massive automation, but because I know, for example, Linux, I know Docker, so I have some basics and, just jumping now to Ansible is just piece of cake. Well, unfortunately, it also requires you to first build some very easy playbooks, like copying the files, managing networking, building some, very easy software. And then you start to build, this more complex automation. So yeah, unfortunately, there are a lot of misconceptions, I think, about the DevOps industry.
Or as we're gonna be boring and repeat ourselves, go back to basic, go back to more simpler stuff. And also, what it's different, for example, for the software roles, which are very often focused on very narrow more narrow, more specialized skill set. For example, people are developing in Java, people are developing in Ruby or C++ or something. In DevOps depends on many factors. You need to have a strong fundamentals in Linux networking or security. You need hands-on troubleshooting. You need infrastructure and hosting. Is it server? Is it cloud native Kubernetes, or is it cloud? You need some networking skill set. You need observability or logging and so on. You need to be able to debug and understanding how teams ship the software. So all the pipeline setup and code promotion on top of it. A bit of security in all of it on top of it, and learn also how to debug and when system fails.
Yeah, I couldn't
So
agree more. There are just so many elements that you just touched upon. Also being able to see how everything works together, right? Because the fact that you mentioned observability, for example. I remember we were trying to set up some service a few days ago in the infrastructure, in the production infrastructure. God, like the logs were so difficult to read because there were just so many information. So you need to also be able to fish the specific sort of log or specific information that you need in order to get your service started. So all of the things that come together.
connecting the dots, I think that's the biggest challenge in DevOps compared to other specialties in software, I think. Also, when you wanna first become DevOps engineer, what do you think actually changes first? Mindset, habits, or technical stack?
So to answer your question, in my view, it really depends on where do you jump from to DevOps? Because if you jump with the engineering mindset, if you work as an engineer, I was working as a telecom engineer in the past. For me, the things that had to change, I started to be more on the software side, start to understand, how to build software and all of the things that we just mentioned. But for people that wants to, become a DevOps, with zero background, and I also been working with this type of people, there are just so many things that really has to change, because then it's not only this engineering mindset that you need to have, but also the technical stack that you need to master and be able to work with it. So that very much depends on what is the background of the person. Now, for me, just the software engineering, I think, was a huge challenge. But people that are jumping, without any experience, it's a mindset plus the technical skills. And unfortunately, not only the software engineering, but all of the domains that you just mentioned a second ago.
Add one thing to it, I think
Mhm.
people need to stay curious and keep learning, because tech is
Mhm.
changing and it's impossible to know all the tool stack. Because, for example, even in cloud native only, you have, I think, few thousand of services. You have an AI on top of it. You have cloud services, which go in hundreds for each provider as well. So you cannot really know everything. It's impossible.
I couldn't agree more, and I was actually thinking about this point before the interview. It's such an excellent comment, because it just reminds me the interview that I have seen with the hiring manager within the DevOps tool, DevOps field. Sorry, and she said that she was not looking for the people with the specific technology that they master, but more of the ability to solve the problems within the DevOps domain. Because let's take, for example, Prometheus, okay? And you go to some other company where they use Splunk, CheckMK, or any other monitoring software. It's basically just a different box, but you already know how to work with the, monitoring system, because you already have this, ability, this pros and cons, how to query the logs, etc. So it's just a different technology, but you already have this mindset and the ability to solve the problems with the tool. So it's not really about as you said, billions of tools in a cloud native world, right? So it's not really about knowing, this specific tool, but it's more of a, you are being able to solve the problems because of your experience. And this is what she was, hiring. This is what she based her hiring on.
That's how I got my first job in DevOps. I was looking for a job in automation robotics, and my first hiring manager hired me in Maersk because I was curious enough and I wanted to learn,
Mhm.
not having any prior knowledge or experience about IT.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly.
fully agree.
Exactly. 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 It's. I think it's also maybe just one point here. It's just, when I also dive sometimes into the cloud native ecosystem, it's just impossible to keep up. There are just new tools almost every day, new AWS features every day, like new AI tools, whatever. It's just impossible to keep up. And I guess if the basics, again, coming back to the basics, and you know how to solve the problems, I think you should be good. So rather than focusing on the specific, oh, I know Prometheus or I know Grafana, you know how to use monitoring tools. I think this is what matters. No?
Yeah, exactly. If you know one tool for, I don't know, monitoring, you know how it's gonna be working in all other places. The principle is gonna be very similar or even the same sometimes, and just packaged a bit differently.
Exactly. I remember that, for example, I jumped to Kubernetes. I started to learn Kubernetes after a few years of already being in the industry, using the tools. And I actually specialize in Ansible. It's one of my favorite tools. It's easy, it's fantastic. I really like it. And what I'm saying is that there are a lot of similarities between the Kubernetes and Ansible, because you also, using some kind of like a file format to define your variables, and then execute the template. So that will also help me a lot when I was building my Kubernetes manifest, as I already had the experience with building some playbooks, because these are just basically the parameters that you put into your YAML file, right, that you later on execute. So there is some continuity. That's what I want to say, like learning one tool after another. Now there are a lot of similarities between them.
Do you think that this is the part which people underestimating when they learn DevOps? I don't think many people talk about it, on YouTube, for example.
Yeah, but I think well, let me think. Well, in my view, the people really underestimate how difficult the tools really are, and they see this jungle of the icons and billions names of the new tools, and they just felt just overwhelmed, and they don't understand that, well, hey, if you just understand the basics, you should be good. Like, don't feel overwhelmed. It's just a one tool after another that works slightly different. But the idea, I mean, again, it's a huge simplification what I'm saying right now, just to be clear here. But if you learn one or two or three of these tools, I think you are very easy to understand the rest of them.
I agree. Once you learn, let's say, the type of each tool, it's very easy to go from one to another.
Like, for
I know.
example, yeah, sorry, go.
Yeah, if you know, AWS, it's much easier for you to gonna get to know to Azure, or if you know how the Docker or managed Docker works on one service, it's gonna be the same on the other. If you know Linux, you're gonna be able to package Linux in Docker or run Linux in the VM or in the server on the. Doesn't matter if it's on the server, is it locally, is it in the Docker or on the cloud?
Exactly. And when you also compare, when you, for example, jump, I don't know, from Ansible to Terraform, they are also very similar tool. Or jumping from Ansible to Puppet or Chef, it's a slightly different command, but the idea is the same. And once you understand it, that, for example, I don't know, Ansible, allows you to manage this X amount of the servers, with this one simple command. Other tools are also able to do it slightly differently, slightly different command, slightly different use case, but the idea is the same. And different maybe underlying protocols, but in general, it's pretty much, very similar.
This way, we kind of over hijacked my next question, which was about what people expect to learn and actually what they should learn. Knowing that, they usually want to learn Kubernetes, but they're supposed to learn Linux first. Then they want to Terraform, but they should get to know networking.
Mhm.
They want pipelines, but it's troubleshooting and so on. So we already kind of talked about it. But the one thing which we didn't mention, we mentioned about tools, we mentioned about thinking, but actually DevOps started from culture, and from the culture change to bring devs and ops together. I very often see that people don't really pay attention to this part, and they, overshoot it. Like, okay, I'm a DevOps, but because I know these tools or so on. Do you see that people also skip this part as well?
Well, it's a very interesting point, because again, as you said, people really are expecting all of these shiny deployments right away, but the reality and the real life check is somewhere else, I would say, because DevOps work is also ops element of it. So it's also operation attached to your development, so your nice deployments. And what I want to say by that is that you also spend a lot of time troubleshooting stuff, trying to get your service working, reading the logs. Again, I remember when we tried to set up some, I think it was SonarQube or some other service that we tried to set up like 1 week ago. It was just like one troubleshooting after another, operation after operation. And then when we set up the service, in the end, we still had some angry users coming at us saying like, well, it doesn't work, or I cannot push, or I cannot scan my code, or whatever. So it's a lot of operations, a lot of troubleshooting. Sometimes it's a bit demotivating because it's not, writing the code, but it's more like looking for the bug in the code. But, well, I guess it is what it is, right? This is what DevOps is really about. It's a development, but it's also operation.
Yeah, and to bring both closer together, and that that you don't only write the code, commit, and you're done, but you are responsible for delivering it all the way to production and getting to know, okay, how does it fail, how to read the pipeline, how to read the logs, how to figure that part out as well.
Yeah, and also how to make it secure in the whole process, right? Yeah.
Exactly. Do you think do you have situations where, your students want instead to learn wrong topic first and they realize that it's not what really they need at the time?
But this is quite common, I would say, unfortunately. But this is usually happened before we start the training. So at our trainings, what we are trying to do is to set the scenes, like why do you actually need it? So it's not just yet another like a shiny tool in your CV, but it's also like part of the bigger picture. And of course, I'm getting the questions like, oh, how about we do, this complex deployment? Wait. We first need to do something much more simpler, because you won't be able to go there. And unfortunately, during the training, I need to spend like 20 minutes, 30 minutes just to set the scene, just to explain how does it fit the bigger picture, because otherwise people will be just, if I just show them the code and let's start coding right away, they wouldn't be able to understand how to utilize these tools within the pipelines, for example, or within like their own infrastructure. So first set the scenes, like this is the building block, this is how it fits like the bigger picture. I remember, for example, we had the Ansible training a few days ago, and I have, I think, 5 slides just to show in the infrastructure where the Ansible fits. Okay, so this is why you need to learn it first, and then we can, jump to the, bigger, more complex stuff. So this explanation about why is very important. But of course, I'm getting all of the time this type of things, like why we cannot do, I don't know, Kubernetes. Well, because you need to do Linux first or Docker first.
So you're showing them whole journey and where they are in the picture and in the setup. And I think DevOps is one of the most misunderstood part of software engineering, because no one knows what it really is, and there's so many definitions of it.
Yeah, that's
even
right.
if Patrick Debois and there is Manifesto, and they have particular definitions of it, but I've seen so many different types of jobs and positions which are labeled as DevOps these days, what brings a lot of confusion, in my opinion.
That's right. I remember I was talking with my friend who was working as a system tester or something like this, and he said, "Well, DevOps is just like a fancy Linux admin," which, like, in all fairness, it sort of also includes, Linux administration, but it's much more than just that, So of course there is a lot of misconceptions here. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. No, me as a DevOps, I was doing from infrastructure to cloud architecture to platform work to DevOps and pipelines, CI/CD itself. So there are many, there is some misconceptions with it. We talked already, what is misunderstood by beginners and how, troubleshooting logs and stability is overshoot compared to what we see, in the tutorials and in the daily reality compared to, when you learn. We already mentioned this part, but if you could magically simplify one part of DevOps education across the entire industry, just to remove the friction, what would you choose?
I think I would, sorry to say, but the low quality education that is there online, it's just massive, and this just confused people. Coming back to what you just said in a second ago, there are like so many misconceptions about DevOps. Again, there are so many also misconceptions in the trainings for DevOps people, and explaining people how they should use different tools without giving them proper explanation about the context like we do in Become DevOps. So trying to, set the scenes, explain why and stuff. And unfortunately, I see that a lot, that people just, put stuff online. There are a lot of errors, a lot of like mistakes. It's something is not really explained in the way it should be. I mean, I'm not saying that we do the perfect materials. Of course, we also do errors from time to time, but we put a lot of effort into making sure that what we teach is also it's a quality, because we know that people would use that in their daily work. And if I'm going to teach about, let's say, Docker security, I don't want to teach something that is incorrect, because then people will, just pull the I don't know, unofficial Docker images with the vulnerabilities, not hardening containers, etc. So, if you decide to teach DevOps, it's also some responsibility that you take, because then people will be referring to your words, to your training on how they should do stuff, how they should write code. So yeah, I'm really mindful about it. And this is very important to me that, I remember I was doing this training, it's actually about the Docker security, and we had a part about the private registries. Okay. And there are pros and cons of using private registry, but you always need to voice them and tell people like when you should use it, when you shouldn't be able to use it. I got a question, quite interesting one recently during the training, why I should even consider the Docker security if I'm just pulling the official images, which is interesting question, I think, to discuss. But the point is that, you really need to have answer for this type of questions, because if I just answer, well, if you pull official images, your infrastructure is secure. Well, it's not. Okay. So you also need to be prepared for these difficult questions. So yeah, I would say I would remove some part of the sort of low quality education there, where teachers really confuse a lot of things and not taking responsibility for their words. Maybe it sounds harsh, but yeah, it's
I
real
think
what I'm saying. It's honest.
I agree. And one point I would add, I would add some courses on DevOps to university curricula. Because, for example, I worked, one of my previous employers who were doing summer school on DevOps, and people had no clue, and they found it very useful later on when they start working in the real industry. Because even in the small startups, you need basics like pipeline or something. You don't want to do manual deployment all the time. And two, yeah, I think that was the primary one. That, because students very often, they find it very useful, but they didn't have opportunity to learn it. And I mean, you have 3 to 5 year programs, so you have plenty of space next to, learning all the theory and practical part. Get at least one DevOps course or one course on at least on the basics, because your application needs to run somewhere, it needs to be shipped. So it's gonna be very much easier for people on the work market afterwards if they get this knowledge.
I couldn't agree more, and it just reminded about the one example I had from my friend. He is now working as a DevOps, and he was writing his master thesis about the services in the 5G. And there is like a lot of connection with the services and the DevOps engineering, because there's like a pipelines, and you ship the services with the containers, you manage them in a Kubernetes cluster. Not diving that much into it. But the point was that he was writing his master thesis about the process, how the services are being shipped. And it was pity, because it was difficult for him to implement the whole pipeline because of lack of time, lack of focus. And it's a shame, because he could really easily done it, but university wasn't interested from this angle. It was more interested from the academic angle. Why do we do it rather than how do we do it? Right. So there is some a mismatch that you're just mentioning between the universities and the and the DevOps education, which is maybe to be changed in some time.
Yeah, definitely. It's, I think always ongoing, theoretical universities and how much they should prepare students for going to the, real work market. And, following up on this, at what point should someone transition from learning tools to actually touching real infrastructure?
Well, another good question, Paulina, but I remember when I was applying for a DevOps job, I knew that I was ready because, I mean, again, that depends on what job you are actually applying, or like depends on many different things. But in my case, I did like billions of these tutorials, running like billions line of code and etc. But one of the projects I did was the Cloud Resume Challenge, and I managed to do it. It's quite famous DevOps challenge where you just build a CI/CD pipeline, and your application is your CV. But the point is that I did this challenge and gave me some confidence to go there and test myself at the job interviews. Okay. And I have, like, in all fairness, when I reflect about this time right now, I went for the DevOps interview and they asked me questions about the Git, and I have to admit that I am not really good at Git. I know some DevOps tools, but I don't know every DevOps tool, of course. And Git is not my strongest side. So when they started to ask me about the Git engineering, commands, how do you troubleshoot, how do you recover, frankly, I didn't know. So I still got the job. I still got the job in all fairness, but I failed this part of the interview. So of course there will be always part that you won't know, but there is a probability that you will get the opportunity to work in the company. So you can run billions, write billions lines of code, do some certifications, all of this type of stuff, and then when you go for the interview and they just ask you about the Git architecture, which is like pretty simple question, and you I don't know because I didn't learn it. So yeah, there's like difficult to like find this specific moment, right? Depends on the questions, depends on the interview, on the positions and stuff. But of course, the more you do before, the better, right? Especially the projects.
Definitely. And touch dev before you touch production.
Definitely.
I think simplest rule.
Yeah, definitely.
I, for example, went completely green to my first job. I had no
Mhm.
clue. But I also didn't go straight away to production, and I also got some mentoring internally in the company, what helped me to learn fast. And if I mess up, that someone can actually take over and fix it. Someone who was more senior at the time, so that definitely helped to do it in more control environment. So going on your own, take full responsibility for production environment in a global company.
Yes, I can really imagine that. And we also have that. It was exactly the same case for me. Maybe I didn't went completely green, but now when I think about it, I was green. But the point is that also was, and I'm still working with a mentor that, helps me and taught me, like, at the beginning, it was for, in particular, you don't touch the server because it's a production. This is your server for testing. You just run your playbooks here first, and then you run the production, okay? And I don't want you to run any production code until I will review it, and I will give you +2, and then we run it, okay? But of course, it's a pretty normal, I think, life cycle of a DevOps engineer. Yeah. So you
Also
first.
have had environment called playground.
Mhm.
Get
It's
something
really
like that
helpful.
if you don't want to play with dev even in the beginning, if you want to test some stuff out.
It's super helpful. It's super helpful, and I really cannot be more grateful for having the opportunity to first run the playbooks or the code on some kind of like a playground or the test servers, and then production, because it could have end up really badly. Yeah.
Exactly. Where do you see DevOps education going and improving realistically in next 2 years?
It's a good question. I think now I'm preparing the training in the Linux engineering, and what I'm trying to do in this training is to put a lot of my experience and my stories. And I think people are joining the trainings because they don't want to look for the information on ChatGPT or Google. They want to have real people, real stories, real critical thinking, rather than information from AI tools. I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm not criticizing tools like ChatGPT. If you want to have some concept to be explained by ChatGPT, it's perfectly fine. You mentioned earlier DNS, right? I remember I was also, using ChatGPT to explain me some concept like some protocols, and it's great tool for explaining you like a piece of engineering, like this specific protocol. But this specific protocol works in like a bigger networking TCP/IP stack. But if you want to learn about like bigger picture, how everything works nicely together, I think this is where the DevOps education or DevOps trainings comes into the play. So you have someone that is real. It's not, AI, but a person that, shares the experience, apply critical thinking, and tell you, maybe you shouldn't be, running this code. Maybe you should run this code. But, the previous version is also fine, but in a different scenario. So I think people would really like to, if people's preferences will definitely go, I guess, and I hope so, towards more of the authentic stories, authentic people, and real deployment scenarios.
I think especially practical part, which is not always taught on the, setup to courses, both for, is it cloud certifications or cloud courses they run, or is it, strict DevOps ones run by multiple people?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think also on top of that, because coming back to previous questions, what we discussed, that real life scenarios are much, much complex than just running a query in ChatGPT. There are many different, like a moving system, many different moving parts in the production systems. And it really requires a real person understanding and knowledge, again, critical thinking, to fix stuff rather than just copy pasting the logs to ChatGPT. Okay, it can help you with some stuff, clarify some things, but you are not able to copy paste your whole infrastructure to ChatGPT, right? Yeah.
No, I mean, there are some tools which help with it, which are building in the cloud, for example. You have Copilot, for example, building in your, IDE. But I think we are not there yet with, with AI involvement in the infrastructure.
Maybe it will change, maybe the tools will evolve, but I think for now, people will really like to have the real person teachers explaining them how to use stuff. But let's see. I don't know where the AI tools will go.
I think time will show. But
Time will show,
there's
definitely.
part which we talked a bit about, but we didn't really dive into it too much, and it's quite important, in my opinion, without mentioning, governance and security and responsibility which come with it as follow-up for DevOps engineers. Because usually, you have admin access to everything, including production,
That's right.
compared to, devs which have only part access to, or read access to majority of the system, and you have write
That's right.
access and admin to everything, and especially to the base infrastructure. So all networking, servers, everything. And beginners very often overshoot it, and they don't really pay attention to it as well. Where do you see that people unintentionally create security depth in their early DevOps, journey projects?
It's a complex question because there are few things here. First of all, I think you still need to learn security at some point. I mean, you still need to at least look at the system, try to read it, how it's all composed, and try not to mess it up. So you still, like, since very like beginning of your career, or like when we have someone joining our team, we are showing this person how the system is being built and what not to mess with. Okay. So this is the first thing. And secondly, I guess it just comes gradually. So the more experience you have, the more sort of knowledge you have about the system. So you are more confident with meddling with the systems. Of course, we have some servers that, even though I'm in the company that I work with for a few years now, I still don't touch, because I just don't think I would be able to recover that in case things go south. But there are other parts of, let's say, production system that I'm able to, mess up with and configure and manage and whatever. So the security aspect is really crucial, and it's something that comes with time. But it's also, I think, the role of leaders, seniors, and more experienced colleagues to guide you as a younger colleague, to show you like, this, and this, not to mess up the system.
And it's also, I think, coming with having, more secure environment. So, ensuring backups where you need, ensuring that you have processes to also, get the environments or servers back to action if needed and how to do it. So I think, yeah, as you said, it's responsibility not on the beginner engineers, but more on the, organization itself and more advanced people who have responsibility overall.
That's right. But as you said, DevOps, they also have the access to removing repositories. They can do really ugly stuff in case they, just confuse stuff. So this is, with great power comes, I guess, great responsibility. So I guess, if you're just mindful of how much power you have, that's a good first step. And then you slowly, gradually just start to use your privileges. But this is definitely a big thing.
Repositories, don't remove them, archive them.
Well,
What do you think is more dangerous for junior engineer? No security mindset at all, or copying best practices without really understanding them?
not having security mindset at all. And I was reflecting, it was yesterday, about my Docker journey. So I still remember when I was just running my Docker, like Docker run, publishing the port, using some, not random, but let's say official image, and that's it. And then I was like forgetting about the service that was running in the public internet. And with experience comes also the awareness of the security. So I started to dig into the secure part of Docker engineering, and turns out it's not so secure by default. So you, as an admin, you need to add more stuff into it. So with the with Docker engineering, for example, I started to add more stuff to make my Docker more secure, and this sort of security cap just comes, like the security mindset comes naturally to you, right? So at the beginning, of course, not many beginners thinks about it, because they just run, I don't know, Docker run, and then bam, you have the service in the public internet. But with time and experience, you just gain more and more sort of awareness, right, about the attacks, about the Docker escape, whatever.
Exactly, you learn, and you also learn how the organization handles the incidents and what do you have to be aware of and what the organizations pay attention to.
And who to call in the middle of the night, but yes.
Exactly. And we talked a lot about the past, we talked a lot about current state, but where the future goes, and what's the difference between someone who comes job ready and someone who stays stuck in the tutorial hall. Where do you think what's the key difference in between two people who can get job ready, or even after learning a lot not get there?
Yeah, let me answer with this story. I met the person that was in this online classes hell. He was doing class after class, and I think he gained some experience, already good experience, and I convinced him that he should go there and apply for jobs. And his argument was, well, there is also yet another course that I need to do, yet another technology that I need to master until I will start applying. And this is just not very sustainable. This is what I want to say, because there will be always some more next technology that you'll be working that will pop up, and you never know what is the technology stack that you'll be working with in the company. For example, I was studying a lot for Azure, and I was doing yet another certification and another architecture and whatever. But in my work currently, I'm not using Azure anymore. And when I reflect about that, if I could, come back in time, I would definitely skip the whole part and just, focus on Linux, because you will always be using Linux or Docker. You'll probably always be using Docker, and just try to, limit yourself to few technologies that you really know, you know how to solve the problems, and then start applying. So you don't need to really be in this, online courses hell, like this infinity loop. Like there are billions of courses, you don't really need to do all of them. So just master a few of the technologies and then just go and test yourself at the job interview.
Add one comment to it. There's always something what you will need to learn, and you would always need to learn the domain knowledge for the particular organization, how their setup is, what are they using. Sometimes it's also industry regulation, depending on what organization you are working in, because it's going to be different from, hearing aid when you have to support multiple versions of software because they have multiple versions of hardware, and it's going to be different for the government. It's going to be different for the medical industry.
That's very much right. That's very much right. And you won't learn that from the Udemy course or from your own home infrastructure, because the real infrastructure productions are much more complex. We have more than 100 servers that all works together. And this is just not something that you learn in home, right? So you need to go out there, test yourself, try to understand both the domain knowledge that you just mentioned, but also the sort of IT side of it. So yeah, definitely.
Exactly. If you had 90 days to make motivated beginner and make them truly DevOps ready, what would your first 3 moves be?
Definitely convince people to not to go to the more complex tools like Terraform or Kubernetes. Just keep that. So that's the first thing. Second is, I guess, just learning Linux. Sorry for repeating myself, but I think this is just the most basic advice I can give to anyone. And also, I know being there, trust me. And the third thing, also try to understand that you don't try to understand the fact that you don't need to learn all of the, for example, CI/CD tools. You just need to understand one, and then just copy paste sort of to the next tool. Okay, so just try to understand how one tool works, like one monitoring system, because then there are just copy paste basically different GUIs and different functions, but the idea behind how the tool works remains the same.
Add one thing to it, learn command line and how to work with various systems from your command line.
Yeah, definitely. I'm just thinking about all of this disastrous comments that I wrote on Windows and how much I was struggling to configure Windows. Oh my God, it's such a nightmare. I mean, I know that maybe there are people that really likes Windows, but for me, it's comparing to Linux. I can never find anything on Windows. Like, everything is just hidden somewhere. I never understand that.
Also work on Mac/Linux my whole career. I was on, I think, Windows once, and I very fast got, Linux subsystem being able to work, because PowerShell and me, we don't go together.
Yeah, exactly.
Uh,
It's just another system for me. I don't really like to work with Windows. Everything is just hidden somewhere. I can never find a thing. That this commands are just strange. I don't understand how do they work. But well, maybe because I'm a Linux guy. What can I say?
primarily. But of course, on Linux systems, still everything is running. Anyway, I have 5 questions for you for rapid answers. So if you can answer within 5 seconds, that would be great. So Linux first or cloud first?
Big time Linux first, then you go to cloud. Sorry.
Too many tools or too little understanding? Which is worse?
Oh, both are nightmare. But studying too many tools, it's a mess. So don't do that. Docker, Linux, Docker, Ansible, CI/CD, and then cloud native tools. Yeah.
Who learn DevOps faster? Network engineers, developers, or total beginners?
People with learning mindset. People that have the curiosity in their DNA. So
One
regard.
DevOps task you
Yeah.
wish.
Okay. Sorry.
One DevOps task you wish could disappear forever.
Linux disk partition on the production server. I don't like it. It's too stressful.
Perfect automation or perfect troubleshooting? Choose one.
Perfect troubleshooting, big time. Yeah, always. Always, yeah.
Great. That's all from my side. And it was great having you. Thank you a lot for joining. But for listeners, where they can find you, your course materials, your courses, and everything you are building at BecomeDevops.
Well, we have a lot of free tutorials on YouTube, so you don't need to pay for anything. Be like all of the different labs materials are on YouTube, but also on Medium in form of the articles if you prefer content, some stuff, some content, some classes on Udemy if you're interested, or the private 101 or like a group sessions that we also organize. So yeah.
Put a link in the description of the podcast. And for everyone listening, if you want us to cover more topics, or you have any particular interest, or you want to be a guest on the topic and go through my questions to you, just text us, and see you at the next episode. Thank you, Szymon.
Thank you very much. Have a nice day.
That's it for today's edition of the Bits and Bolts with Paulina. Did you like what you heard? Of course you do. Tell your friends.